On this episode of The Sonic Truth, we sit down with Colin Anderson, a seasoned pro in podcast and content production. We dive deep into the evolution of podcast networks, what it takes to scale a podcast operation from startup to sustainability, and how content curation can make or break a show's success. Colin shares insights into the ever-changing monetization landscape and what podcasters need to do to optimize revenue while staying authentic. Thank you for tuning in and welcome back to The Sonic Truth.
Welcome back to The Sonic Truth. Thank you for tuning in. Today we have a very special guest on the podcast, Colin Anderson, former VP of Content and Podcast at SXM. He also held roles at Earwolf, Stitcher, Maximum Fun, and BBC. So a long veteran of production, content production, and audio. Welcome, Colin.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for being here. It's a pleasure to connect. I understand that although Los Angeles is home, you are overseas today.
I'm coming to you live from Scotland.
So fun. I am so jealous. It must be absolutely beautiful. So thank you again, Colin, for coming on. We obviously admire and respect your incredible experience in audio and with content production and producing and all that you've done in and around the industry. So we really wanted to talk today about a couple of different things around scaling success and content and curation, monetization strategies. So let me just dive in here with the first question and we can just kind of take it from there. One thing we're interested in picking your brain on are what are some of the key challenges and lessons that you've learned in working with different brands and agencies to grow a podcast operation from early stage development to more of a sustainable revenue generating business?
Scaling was something that I kind of came in to do at Earwolf in 2016. Chris Bannon, who was then the chief content officer, hired me. Earwolf had been going probably 6 years at that point. It was a network that had grown up around Scott Aukerman and Paul Scheer and their kind of Los Angeles improv comedy friends. And that was a really strong basis for a network because people guested on each other's shows and were supportive of each other's stuff. And there was a kind of coherent aesthetic of like, if you like the comedy in this show, then you'll probably enjoy Ron and Beverly or Womp It Up or whatever, that each show felt like a kind of an iteration of something else on the network. I think at the point that I joined, there was probably 20 shows, something like that. And I think that there was the risk at that point that every time there was a new show that felt coherently like something that could come off Comedy Bang Bang, it was now like competing with its own audience to be the show that you listen to on a Monday or a Tuesday or whatever. And so I looked to try and diversify our like demographics within that comedy world. So we brought in more queer hosted shows, more BIPOC hosted shows, and tried to replicate Scott's original Earwolf cluster with shows that were for slightly wider audiences. So that was the way of trying to make that growth more sustainable. It was also a really fortunate time in podcasting where Scott had created this network that already had scale. Comedy Bang Bang, How Did This Get Made were both in the kind of top 20 podcasts at any given time. So we had a strong platform to launch new shows off. And back then, once you got Steve Wilson at Apple's email address and you had a new show coming, you'd reach out to Steve Wilson at Apple and he helped get it profiled and stuff. So it felt much easier to launch shows in 2016 than it does a decade later.
Mm-hmm. And that's actually a good segue into my next question. The audio space is obviously crowded and only getting increasingly so. So how do you approach developing and curating engaging content that stands out among all the rest that's already there?
Standing out is just such a challenge. I guess the simplest route to it is through the kind of famous people option where you go, we know that this author or actor or whoever has a definable audience already, like ideally has a incredible socials and an email list where if they launch something, they can contact their fan base and say, come and support me in this new thing that I've launched. And I think you're still looking for content genres that aren't already huge in podcasting. Like who are the audience groups, the interest groups that aren't being served right now? And that was something I felt like I saw again, like a decade or so ago when My Favorite Murder launched, seeing their growth trajectory from like 0 to 1 million listens in the course of a few months. And it was just like, yeah, I guess up until that point, podcasts were mostly white guys, maybe with some sort of tech nerd background, or public radio refugees who were like, here's the thing that I really want to make, but public radio won't let me make. And Karen and Georgia were like, well, how about if women host podcasts, and how about we do shows that are about true crime? And like it blew up. So there's, you know, what are the reality TV kind of content opportunities in podcasts now? Seems like something that's huge in other media, but not yet in podcasts. And I guess that might be where some of the kind of TikTokers, influencers, video podcasts are going to come in, where it's that kind of reality TV, his access to my personal life and the events that I'm going to, content that their audiences seem to like.
And in terms of spreading the word about new podcasts for interest groups that aren't being served at the moment, I mean, is it really all about leveraging TikTok and video channels and things like that for promotion, or is there a secret sauce for how you spread the word?
A secret sauce is I'd go to my marketing colleague experts and really work with them. I think some of the things that we've done in the past is find really specific comps for the shows that we want to do cross promos with and things like that. And often a marketing team are kind of projecting a campaign before they've heard a pilot, or like they really benefit from the production team talking through like how they imagine the show going, what shows we think are similar. And then by having the marketing team really, really well read in, I think they're able to do much more effective work. And you don't end up with just going, well, it's like a famous person interviewing famous people, let's just advertise on the top 5 famous people interview podcasts, because that might not be the tone. So I guess I'm dodging the question of marketing secret sauce in favor of really trying to inform and empower the marketing teams who are looking at these numbers every which way, and can even tell you like what success needs to be for a different podcast can be different things. Like there's shows and networks out there that just need to hit the charts, and there's a way that you can market to just focus on chart success, maybe over download success. So working with the marketing team with your specific goals in mind is valuable. And Christy Maribel is someone that was at Stitcher and SiriusXM and now has her own consultancy, and she's always someone that I go to and just get advice.
Oh, that's great. And what about monetization? So obviously there's a lot of talk constantly about the best way to monetize podcasts, and I think even those channels are always evolving to some extent. In your opinion, what are some of the most effective ways to monetize revenue growth for these podcasts while also maintaining authenticity?
I'm quite commercially minded as producers, production folks go. I really want to see the talent that I'm working with get paid for the work that they're doing. And so I'm pretty comfortable with ad sales and ads being available at podcasts, and generally encouraging of, if that's not a brand that you really dislike, then approve it and read the ad. And so in terms of like that kind of sellout mentality, I'm there. But I also loved about like Stitcher Premium and the places that have got the kind of Apple Podcast Plus things. I really like the idea that you can go, it's free and ad supported if you want it free and ad supported, or you can pay for the Patreon or the whatever premium version that is ad free. And I like to be able to give consumers that choice of like, how do you want to support the show? Do you want to support it by listening to ads, or do you want to, are you in a position to pay a couple of bucks a month and fund it that way? And then which shows like work best, and which like monetization models varies as well. Like the shows like Hollywood Handbook, who were kind of long ear wolf, but there's shows that are like, if someone could listen to one podcast a week, this would be the podcast, and they'd probably listen to it several times over. Like those ones, I think, do really well with Patreon, because they're fans' number one priority. Fans want to directly support those hosts. And so we saw shows like that making tens of thousands of dollars a month through a Patreon, where that's probably a lot more than they'd be making from ad supported. And then I also love the maximum fun model, where it's like listener supported. The challenges with anything is that kind of subscription fatigue, right? And I think a lot of people are feeling the squeeze financially at the moment, and looking at how many TV subscriptions do I have, how many Patreons, how many Substacks, and rationalizing. And so I think the best business model is to hedge your bets and have both options. And then if advertising's having a great month, then awesome. And if you've got some subscribers that are there for the longer haul, and you can build this like deeper relationship with, and do fan meetups and bonus content and whatever else, then that's great too. And there's, a sliding balance as to what works best for your individual show.
Mm-hmm. And zooming out with a wider lens, monetization and otherwise, what trends do you see shaping the industry over the next, it's hard to even say next few years, because I feel like so much can change even in the next 6 months. So I guess just future state, and how can or should creators and the distribution platforms prepare for some of those trends?
I mean, the big trend this year that it feels like everyone, all the big networks and whatever, are betting on is video. And it feels worryingly like the kind of podcast bubble that we had, where pre-pandemic P&Ls and greenlighting shows and everything just kind of assumed exponential growth. Just it seems like podcasting's growing, and it seems to me a little bit like videos being treated as this is going to solve all the problems of Apple iOS 17 downloads dropping and everything. Everyone's just like, get video, and then video will fill the gap.
Right.
But it doesn't seem like the video sales, they're not actual video sales yet. That's the promise of future video sales. And so it's a little bit nerve-wracking as someone that's stuck with kind of podcasting as an audio medium. And a lot of my hosts have been like, yes, the reason we love doing a podcast is we don't have to do hair and makeup. And so adding video still adds like somewhat additional expense and extra production difficulties. And, maybe it is good for marketing. The clips are good, but I don't know if people really see like clips of their podcast on TikTok go viral. I don't think that then drives people over to subscribing to the podcast. They just enjoy more viral clips on TikTok. So both the revenue value of video and the marketing value of video seem somewhat unproven out at the moment, while we're all going, I guess we need it and we should have it, and let's figure it out. So it'll be interesting to see how that spins out longer term, or by the end of the year.
Yeah. And I feel like the data on that is interesting too. Like, even when you look at the top podcasts that are doing the best, that have that video element, consumers are still reporting that they're listening to them, the audio only versions, wherever they consume their podcasts as well. And so it's almost like it really depends on where they're consuming, and if they have the time to sit in front of a screen and watch. Like, it's a nice to have, and an additional experience to the actual one where they're just listening and consuming in the way that we all assume they would be. It's very interesting. I didn't know if your next trend, if you had one in mind, or if it was going to go in this direction, but wanted to get your thoughts also on AI and the integration of AI in the production process, in the creative process. Like, did you have any thoughts there on any future trends around AI?
I'm still pretty new to using and playing around with AI stuff myself, but I think there's really cool opportunities, even just it bringing down the cost of like transcription and filtering through what content you have. And I was thinking there's a bunch of old radio archives that I'd love to ingest into a machine and be able to transcribe, and then find over 10 years of a radio show every time a particular band gets mentioned, and suddenly you can have like an oral history of that band with like your favorite beloved DJ talking about them. So there's kind of this could be a fun way of using it options. I think there's hosts that are thrilled at the idea of generative AI being able to make their ad reads localized, or, take some of the workload off that, or correct a flubbed line without them having to like plug their microphone back in and come and do things. The interesting thing I guess I've seen is that a lot of the podcasters that I've worked with are SAG and otherwise union affiliated. So while there's people that are are creatively interested in what they can do with AI, or that there might be money saving. That's a Freudian slip. Time slaving things from AI. They're also don't want to be the talent that embraces AI and like steps out of line in front of the union or isn't seen as being supportive to their union. So I think in podcasting, we're going to have to see that get kind of navigated before we see a ton of other stuff. And then just on production, again, like I said, I'm still playing around with it, but I think I still want to make my podcasts organically and be able to hear each of the edits and not just have edited off script and then hear that the breaths are all over the place or the timing or there's emotion in the delivery or whatever that is beyond just these are the words said in a podcast. So I think there's still reasons to not use AI for craft purposes anyway. And
then what about discoverability? Do you see anything on the horizon there that could assist with that?
Yeah,
not necessarily related to AI, but in general.
Yeah, it's so difficult to discover, and like there's still so few outlets. Like The Guardian in the UK still does like podcast reviews. Like there's not that many places that are like this is a legitimate, well-recognized publication talking about podcasting and highlighting stuff that you might be excited about.
Right.
So, I mean, there's everything to play for there. There's not a company or an institution or whatever that really defines here's where you go to discover podcasts. And like we mentioned, like that, it kind of used to be Apple, and Apple just didn't seem committed to. I mean, Apple's just doing a lot of other things that aren't podcasting. So they've put some effort into launching podcasting as a medium, but they've not seemed to want to own it going forward. So that kind of Apple front page, I think, doesn't have the impact it used to in terms of being able to launch a show. And the Apple charts are bragging rights, but you've also got the Spotify charts underneath them. And then, in all our newsletters that we get, it's also like international charts and like what's happening elsewhere in the world. There's not like a single source of truth.
Maybe that's a good opportunity for someone listening to really figure out, like, I love the idea of reviews. I think it depends on who it comes from, of course, but that's, I think, especially here in the States, one thing that is really lacking that I think could be interesting.
Yeah. And I guess then some like Rotten Tomatoes style, like searchability, like,
yes.
Oh, I always think like public reviews are only useful as much as you trust the member of the public that's doing the review. I remember seeing like a TripAdvisor review for a hotel that was so glowing, and they were like, "Can you believe it? There was a bathroom attached to my hotel room." I was like, "Oh, you've just not been in hotels before. You don't get to rate this hotel 5 stars."
That's it. Exactly. It's only as
and that
good
was where
as,
the value of the
source.
network and saying, "Oh, well, if it's like a Comedy Bang Bang, it's like a Scott Aukerman thing, then I'm going to try it because I trust the flavor, I trust the curation." That seems to be the real value of networks, is to elevate and to be able to leverage that kind of feed drop. Like Conan will put it in his feed, or Office Ladies will put it in their feed, or whatever. Like that's how you get an impact at launch these days.
Last question I have for you is around misconception. So what is the biggest, in your opinion, common misconception about podcasting that you wish more people understood?
I think maybe as an industry, we're not as confident as we should be. And we're talking about, I mean, I'm as guilty as anyone. I'll talk about like a podcast bubble bursting, but podcasting's still growing. We're still bringing new people into listening to podcasts. It's difficult because there's whatever the number is, 500,000 podcasts publishing each week. So it's a little bit harder to cut through. But stat I always go back to, and I was kind of defensive of when we launched Office Ladies, there was industry or parts of the industry that was like, well, it's a TV rewatch show. It's like, it's low effort. It's low craft. It seemed like the haters came for us. But that first week of Office Ladies, where we got like 1 million downloads or whatever in a week, and 20% of those people hadn't ever listened to a podcast before. That's 200,000 people that presumably went away and maybe tried another podcast afterwards. It's like they're getting new people in. And so I think that's where, like I was saying before, the opportunities are providing content that's not already being provided. And, maybe what we've done in podcasting is seen the successes and just tried to replicate those instead of going, where are the opportunities for new stuff? What is the content that people love reading about or watching documentaries about? Or
That makes sense.
I was thinking, as I've come out of this kind of corporate podcasting world and looking around at options, programmatic and network ads have really scaled and evolved over the last couple of years. And I think SiriusXM were, a major part in that. They did a really good job of building that out and making it work. And then if you can partner that with more customized sales, like I think those are the biggest opportunities for podcasters. If you can have some automated source that's going to fill the empty ad breaks effectively, but then partner with someone who can sell your show in a deeper, more customized way, where maybe there's some socials involved, maybe there's some video involved, maybe there's some send the host to New Mexico to stand next to a car and make it more of like a branded deal. Like, I think those shows, I think that's a way for a podcast to really, really do well. And I think that doesn't matter so much, even the size of the podcast at that point. And so the last couple of years, I feel like a lot of podcasters have been being told, oh, your show's too small to sell or to be a priority. Certainly at the kind of Amazon, Sirius, Spotify, high level networks. Mm-hmm. And I think if you're like a smaller show, I guess I go back to like a Hollywood Handbook I mentioned, or if you're a smaller show that's doing like 50,000 downloads an episode, which is crazy that's a smaller show, but that's a smaller show. Mm-hmm. Now, I think you can make really good money that way. If you've got a devoted seller who gets what your show is and is able to sell your value in something other than just your download numbers, then I think you can have a really solid business.
That's excellent advice. And for those listening that maybe have that show, are seeing those download numbers and have no idea how to get started, where would you direct them in terms of being able to find that network, that seller, get educated on programmatic? Where would they turn?
There's more and more kind of independent and consultant folks. There was, maybe still is, this boutique marketing and sales network called Lipstick and Vinyl that I really loved the concept of, because it felt like this halfway point between being in a network and partnering with someone else on sales and marketing. And sales and marketing seems to be the thing that most podcasters are like, I've got the content, I can make the show. Now, how do I get people to hear it and make money from it? So kind of independent sales and marketing, I think, is really valuable. The one time that I've used that was when I just joined Earwolf and wanted to bring Jonathan Van Ness's show over to Earwolf, and it was still, the downloads were too small at the time, but we knew that Queer Eye was going to come out and Jonathan Van Ness was going to become world famous. So I tapped one of our sellers from our in-house sales team and said, would you mind just selling this show? And they did it independently and were, very motivated to do so, and did it successfully. And so I mean, you just need to find a seller that you like and that gets your show and that has the bandwidth to take something on, I guess, which is easier if you're part of a network and have strong connections. Yeah, anyone listening to this podcast can do that, I reckon.
Yeah, absolutely. I love Lipstick and Vinyl, everything that they were doing. I think they were actually acquired in 23 by Realm. So look them up. Hopefully
we need another one.
Around. Yeah. That's great. That's great advice though. Thank you. Is there anything else that you want to, any departing thoughts or recommendations or insights that you want to leave our listeners with?
Lipstick and Vinyl. It was Alison Marino, I think, was a salesperson at Midroll or Earwolf or one of those iterations, and then set up her own shop, Lipstick and Vinyl, doing marketing and ad sales for podcasts, and mostly doing marketing and sales for podcasts. And it just seemed like such a great idea for a business. And track someone like Alison down.
Track her down. Yeah, maybe she can help anyway.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's the other nice thing about podcasting that I think has stayed true over 10, 15 years, is just reaching out to other people in the industry. People are generally open to have a conversation with you. It still feels like we're a community that supports each other.
So true. And I don't foresee that going away. I feel like there's a lot of really special, talented individuals and personalities within this industry, and that I at least I hope, my hope for the podcast industry is that sense of community never goes away, because I think it's really beneficial all around.
For sure.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you again for coming on. It's been such a pleasure, and we hope to have you on again soon.
Yeah, hopefully I can meet you in real life sometime.
Absolutely.